So Bezat Hashem, this class is for the refuah shlema of a young boy, my friend's son, which unfortunately suffered a terrible accident with his eye, a 4-year-old boy. And Bezat Hashem, God should protect him. His name is Baruch Shmuel ben Chana, he should have a refuah shlema. And we should hear very good news very, very soon, a miraculous news.
One eye?
The Alter Rebbe, in chapter 41, speaks about a foundation of our service to God. Interestingly enough, on Thursday night, we will be counting the 41st day of the Omer. And the 41st day of the Omer is Yesod Shebe Yesod, the foundations of all foundations. The foundation within the foundation. I have a whole, hopefully, book that will be coming out that explains how every one of the 53 chapters of Tanya are, each chapter is for the Sfira of that day of Sfirat HaOmer. The 50th chapter, which deals with what's called Kalut HaNefesh, which is the soul exiting the body and not being able to withstand the limitations of the body and wanting to cleave to God. That's connected to Shavuot, since it says, Al kol dibur v'dibur parcha nishmatan, for every word that was said by God, the souls went out of the bodies. And the rest of the chapters as well, the Kodesh HaKodashim, the holiness, and how God's presence comes down in the world, which is directly connected to Shavuot. So the chapter 41, the Lubavitcher Rebbe asked that we should learn and review this chapter before prayer. I really went deep into it and wrote a 6-page essay on what this chapter represents. It's not even a chapter, it's only a part of a chapter. So I would like to study this with you and give you a little food for thought before your prayer, and in general, something you should have to think about throughout your day. So it starts like this: Beran tzarich liot lezikaron tamid. A person should have always in his memory Reshit ha'avodah ve'ikara ve'shorsha, the beginning of the service, ikara, its essence, ve'shorsha, its root. I'm going to start with the first words. Lezikaron. It has to be a remembrance. You have to remember always. The Alter Rebbe in Likutei Torah, Parashat Kedoshim, discusses the fact that a person should have the words of Torah in his memory. But he doesn't say only in his memory, it says Al luach libo tamid, on the board of his heart always. It's interesting that even in English, in French, in all languages, when you speak about learning something and knowing it, you said, I learned it by heart. It doesn't say by memory. Why? In the 1700s, so I'd like to explain what the Alter Rebbe said. In the 1700s, there was a doctor by the name of Dr. Klaprad. This doctor made an experiment with patients which had lost their memory. I forgot the story, but I'm just joking. So he went to a patient and he went to shake her hand. He said, my name is Dr. Klaprad. And she said, my pleasure. 5 minutes later, he came back into the room and he said, Good evening, ma'am. Do you remember me? She said, I'm sorry, I've never met you before. This is the first time we meet. Oh, okay. My name is Dr. Klaprad. And this incident repeated itself quite a few times. Each time she's extending her hand, she doesn't recognize the person she just met 5 minutes ago, and she says, my pleasure. This time, Dr. Klaprad got a little smart. He put between his hands a little needle. And he says, hello, my name is Dr. Klaprad. Ouch! He goes out of the room, comes back into the room, and he says, ma'am, do you remember me? I'm sorry, sir, I've never met you before. My name is Dr. Klaprad. And he extends his hand, and she just puts her hand back, and she doesn't want to give him the hand. So he says, there's a big problem here. On one hand, she doesn't remember me. On the other hand, she remembers she had a bad experience with me. Right? Reminds us of some relationships we have. She doesn't remember me, but she remembers the bad experience. So obviously, there are two types of memories. And he said there is the memory of an emotion, and there is an emotional memory. So when I heard this story by Dr. Stauber, alav shalom, Shmuel Stauber, it struck me right away as to the different parts of the intellect. There's the dry intellect, which stores information. And then there is the level of what's called the da'at. Da'at, which is knowledge. It's not dry intellect. The knowledge itself is translated by the fact that it touches the emotions. It's not only a dry intellect that you get a memory of something that happened or an emotion even, but it directly affects you in your emotion and therefore it never leaves you. I would like to say, we know that we have two intellects, the right brain and the left brain, the creative brain, chokhmah, wisdom, and the left brain, which is understanding. And we have two main emotions, which are the two wings on the right side as a derivative and a continuation of the right brain, the creative brain. We have hesed, kindness, benevolence, and so on. And the power of development, of analysis, we have the left hand, which is severity. Says the Alter Rebbe, now we understand. There are 4 parashiot in our tefillin, 4 sections. 2 of them have to deal with the intellect. We read them when we put the Rabbeinu Tam. Sephardic Jews do it even before Rashi. Kadesh li kol bechor, sanctify the firstborn, ve'hayaki yevyecha, and when Hashem will bring you. These are the 2 chapters which have to do with chokhmah, wisdom, and binah. And then we have the Shema, which the first chapter has to deal with love, ve'ahavta, and the second chapter has to do with fear. So we have the 2 intellects, how when they bind together, they are the source of the 2 emotions, the 2 main emotions and wings that motivate a person and drive him. We are either attracted by something or we are repulsed or scared of something. But this starts at the intellectual level. And therefore the tefillin have 4 boxes. Because within the brain itself, you have a beginning of emotion. Once you're able to translate the brain into emotion, then you have an emotional memory, an emotional experience, where what you catch is because of the excitement, the involvement, the fact that you feel this is personal. It's not just knowledge. This is where the relationship with God starts. You know how for years you could see something? Just like this lady once came to a rabbi, a Chabad rabbi, and she said, "That's it. I'm making my house kosher." The rabbi looks at her and says, "You've been with us for over 10 years. What happened?" "I saw a billboard and it said keep kosher." Okay, 1 second. It just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm more than a billboard. Says, yes, but this time I thought it was talking to me. There are moments where we're just turned on and we're able to have the emotion. The intellect is not a filter for the emotion, it's the passageways. It's the passage to emotion. So when we speak about zikaron, remembering, this is more than just remembering at an intellectual level and being a data bank, a Google brain, an encyclopedia, but rather absorbing and actually making it one. My teacher in Israel, I was at his son's wedding, and around the table were a few of his students. And I was discussing with one of the students how it's incredible how he knows every quotation from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's teachings here and there, when it was said, what volume, and so on and so forth. How does he do it? And one of the students there said he was once asked this question. And he answered the following. He said, what do you remember in your life? We remember something we are excited about. Right? I don't know about you guys. I have selective memory. I don't remember most of my youth. Only certain stories I remember. Certain things which caught me in my emotions, I remember. So, he said, when I read or I hear an idea that's exciting, I remember it. Comes out that everything excites him. Everything is exciting. Everything is motivating, and therefore he remembers everything. Meaning he doesn't only catch it at a level which is intellectual, he catches it at a level which is emotional within the intellect. Now it's true that when one wants to be able to transform the emotion, it needs to start with the intellect. You see, there are three levels, three dimensions. There is the mutba, there is the murgash, and there is the muskal. There is what is natural within nature, there is the emotional, and there is the intellectual. The soul itself, the three levels of the soul, have these three levels within them. The natural, the basic, the element of life that every living thing needs, which is higher than just physicality. Then you have the emotional. Now the emotional is very, very potent, very powerful, but out of control. So, how do we take care of the emotions? We have to use the intellectual soul, which is in the brain, the neshama. On Friday night, the custom is, in Hasidic communities, to read a portion of the Zohar of Truma. That portion of Zohar explains how on Shabbat all the emotions are elevated to their source. Rabbi Bar-Lev, in his commentary, Yedid Nefesh, on the prayer book, brings the Alter Rebbe's explanation on this and says that on Shabbat there is no negative forces. Why? Being that everything goes back to its source, at that level, you can manipulate it the way you want. Because it's not in its full expression. When you are in the midst of your emotion, what did we just read in the Mishnah? Al teratzeh ta'ish b'sha'at ka'aso. Do not try to calm a person when he is angry. Don't do it. It's not going to work. Don't try to discipline a kid that's hungry. Just came back from school. This is the time for you to tell him this and that. No. There's a time for everything. It's actually when things are calm, the emotions are not on fire, when the intellect is more at the forefront, that this is the moment to take control of the emotions. So we see the emotions have their root within the brain. Reshit avodah ve'ikara ve'shorsha. The beginning of the service of God. Ve'ikara, its root. The root is hidden. Right? It's ikara. Ikar is the essence. Ve'shorsha, the root, which is hidden, which is very deep. להיות תמיד לזיכרון תמיד ראשית העבודה ועיקרה ושורשה. You have to have always in your mindset the beginning of the service to God. What is the beginning of the service to Hashem? I'm going to shock you guys. Pass me that, Tanya, please. No, the big book, yeah. Thank you. So, to read it in the Alter Rebbe's words, להיות לזיכרון תמיד, it should be a constant in the mind of man. והוא, what should be constant? כי אף שהיראה שורש לסור מרע ואהבה לבעשה טוב. There are two types of commandments. You have the commandments that are the positive, active commandments, the ones that draw you closer, just like in a relationship. They're the things you invest in, the things that you do in order to get closer in your relationship. And you have the fear, which is there, that pushes you away from doing bad. Right? You have the commandments that you do because you do it out of love, and you're drawn to, you connect, you bond. And then you have the things that you don't transgress because you fear. I don't want to lose my husband. I don't want to lose my wife. I don't want to lose my child. I don't want to lose my relationship. Therefore, there's certain things I would never do, because I know that if I do that, I'm destroying my relationship. The same thing, God says, do not kill, do not steal, do not lie. He says things that you have to do in order to connect. So we have these two relationships. So let me ask you, which one is the most essential in the relationship? The fear of God, the not to do, or the love of God? What do you say? Huh? Fear? Love?
Fear.
I asked the great Yonatan Lenonsky, and he told me, all you need is love. John Lennon. So, bad joke. So, if all you need is love, then la da 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 da, you know what happens after that. So he says no. Af al pi chen, even though it's true, at first glance, I look at things. What is better? To be productive, to do, to love, because when I love, I do, and I do, and I do. And when I fear, I might be just static and refrain from doing. So between refraining from doing and doing, it seems that to do is better. It seems that loving is better than fear. So he says, it's not enough to have only love. First of all, you have to awaken in you a sense of fear. Hativ'it, the natural fear that you have inside of you. Amsuteret belev kol Yisrael, which is hidden in every Jew. Every Jew naturally has a certain fear of his mother. Has a certain fear, right? Sorry. Has a certain fear. You're joking, but if you look, there's a doctor that studies the brain, and he's Indian, and he has a wonderful TED Talk on the reaction of the body to the brain and to the emotions. And he says about his Jewish patients that their hands get sweaty when we speak to them about their mother. But it's okay, I'm just telling you, I'm quoting a TED Talk. It's okay. I will stop right there. Let's continue. So, you have to awaken the natural fear which is dormant inside of us. Shelo limrod b'melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu Canaan. What? The fear of what? The fear of rebelling against God. You don't want to rebel. Which means, I'm going to say the expression in Yiddish, as a Yid nicht will und nicht kann sein abgerissen von Elokus. A Jew doesn't want and cannot uproot himself from godliness. You have Jews which even at the time of the Holocaust were ready to die as Jews, even though they might not have been practicing Jews. And throughout the generations and throughout the history of the Jewish people. Where does this come from? Because a Jew cannot disconnect and uproot himself from his connection, his life source. The thing is that fear is hidden. The question is, how do I make this fear something which is potent enough, present enough, at the forefront enough of my life, that I'm never going to sin again? I'm very surprised there's no singer that didn't make a song yet called Never Sin Again. Right? Obviously, singers need to learn Tanya. So, you have to awaken that awe. You have to realize, who am I? Who am I connected with? So, how do we do this? This, the Alter Rebbe says, can only be accomplished through mindfulness and a deep meditation and contemplation. People don't think. you're around the table, there are certain things that you will never talk about. You are in public, there's certain things you do not talk about. Why? Because you understand, you are conscious of where you are and what the environment is. I remember one day there was a delegation of Chabad rabbis that went to see the president. Now, you can imagine that to be a Chabad rabbi, you need to have a certain chutzpah. You go into a community, you're not hired by the community, you hire the community. You start with nothing and you don't care what people say because you know you're on a mission to light up the lives and the flame that's inside every one of the Jews there. And therefore, in order to have that type of drive, you need to know that there's only one God. And that's the only thing that's important for you. And besides that, you know that the only thing that's important for you is your general, the Rebbe. So these Hasidim, when they went to see the president, for them, who's important? The Rebbe. So one of them just tapped the back of the president like he was his buddy, and it wasn't giving the respect you need to give to a president. I understand that some of you might say that some presidents don't really deserve respect. Let's not talk about that. The bottom line is, once a person's established, has been named the president of the United States, right, has that type of a position, it is our duty to respect him. You don't have to agree with him, but you have to respect him. The Rebbe got very upset. Where did this lack of respect come from? From the fact that I don't know in front of whom I'm standing. What is the role of this person? How come? How can I digress, go away from the path and the mission that's been given to me, Jew, in this world? Because I'm not aware, it's not at the forefront, I don't understand, I don't know the God that I'm serving. So he says, you want to be able to awaken this fear and know the God that you're serving. Like a great rabbi said, the God that you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. We don't know. We make this image of God that is so human, has nothing to do with God. It has to do with our complexes and our problems. So how do you awaken this? Dehainu, he says, the way to do this, leidbonen b'machshavto al kol panim. At least you should contemplate and meditate on the following. Gdulat Ensof Baruch Hu, the greatness of the infinite one, blessed be he. You realize that you are finite and God is infinite. Umalchuto asher yimalchut kol olamim elyonim betachtonim. And the royalty and the dominion of God, which is the master over the higher realms and the lower realms. It's true. We think we control the world. We speak about, we know what's going to happen with the world. We make a whole movement about global warming. It's never been so cold everywhere, but we speak about global warming. There's volcanoes that we thought would never erupt 3 times in the period of 2 months. Hurricanes are coming, they're destroying at the last minute. Every hurricane that's come to Florida has moved on. When you realize Malchuto Malchut Kol Olamim Elyonim Betachtonim, that God's dominion His dominion is over all the supernal realms and the lower levels. Every speck of dust is controlled by God. A little eclipse, the whole world is in shambles. Everything is out of control. So, you think about this. Then he says, you continue. Ve'iu memale kol almin, vesovev kol almin. And he fills all the worlds. And he is at the same time aloof and above all the worlds. He is not contained by the world. He is not limited by the world. Our soul, to a certain degree, is limited by our bodies. Once we access the soul, we're able to go above our bodies, but we're still limited in physical bodies. That's why we have to take care of our bodies. And the Torah teaches us, you have to be very careful with your bodies and take good care of what God gave you. But God is in everything, and at the same time, He's above everything. As it says in the verse, I, God says, fill the heavens and the earth. You look at the heavens, you look at the earth, everything is a reflection and an emanation of God. So once you realize this greatness of Hashem, and then you say, one second, what's happening? God puts aside all of the supernal realms, all of this universe, and He decides to set aside His royalty over the Jewish nation and over you in particular. When you make it personal and you realize, one second, God is my God. This is my God. God put everything aside and is taking care of me individually. It's not only in a general way that God is the master of the universe and He puts Himself only on a nation, He puts Himself on you. Every one of us in his personal relationship with God feels that personal connection. בפרט כי חייב אדם לומר בשבילי נברא העולם. Why was man created alone? Birds, vegetation, animals, fish were all created in multitudes. Man was created alone. To teach us that the whole universe was created for one man. And therefore every one of us has the obligation to say, Bishvili, the world was created for me. Not that the world was created for me and therefore I'm a big shot. The world was created for me and therefore I have a responsibility. Chassidut goes a deeper level. The word olam in Hebrew comes from the word he'elem, which means concealment. The concealment of God was created for me, that I have to reveal God in the world. And therefore, once you realize that God put everything aside to be my king, what do? It's not enough. What should you do? והוא גם הוא מקבל עליו מלכותו, להיות מלך עליו. And therefore you accept upon yourself the yoke of God and said, you know what, this is my God, this is my king. I want Him to be my king. Meaning, if anything is going to dominate me, and if anything is going to direct me, I want it to be God. You know, in Rosh Hashanah we say a prayer which makes no sense. 48 hours we're saying to God, God, be our king. God, put your fear and awe upon us. Millions and hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent in this country and over the world on how to take away fears. And we're saying for 48 hours, God, put your fear upon us. Because you know what? המפחד מאחד לא מפחד מאף אחד. The one that fears, the one and only, fears no one. Once you understand where does the fear come from, at that moment, you're scared of nothing and no one. That's what happened with the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov, when he was 7 years old and his father Eliezer passed away, told him, I'm telling you right now, you should fear no one but God. And he took it to heart. And he had this in his mind. And I only have the fear of Hashem, that's it. How can I separate myself even for 1 second from God? So at this moment that you realize that God puts everything aside for you, he says, 1 second. Let me accept him as my king. Ul-ovdo, and then to serve him, ve'la'asot retzono, and to do his will, which is more than just serving him. I want to do his will. I want to do what he really wants. Not only what he's asking me for. Bechol mine avodat eved, in so many different ways. Each one with his talents, his qualities, his nature. Vehine, the moment you do this, my friends, Hashem nitzav alav, God's presence is over you. That's why the tzaddikim, wherever they go, in every moment, in any place, the presence of God is with them. Because they feel that heaviness. What does it say about Ruth? When Ruth converted to Judaism, it says that she started walking like an elderly lady. Why? Because it says, Torah metisha kocho shel adam. The Torah, accepting the yoke of God, the yoke of mitzvot, makes a person physically weak because he is carrying something. The moment her neshama came into her, she accepted that. It was weak. It was hard. Resh Lakish was a bandit. And when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, you know what? Because Resh Lakish saw Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in the water, he thought it was a woman. He jumped in the water, he realized it was a man. He was a beautiful man, a very handsome man, but didn't have beard. So he said, you know what, you come. Resh Lakish told him, you come in my gang, and we're going to go, and with your beauty, we're going to be able to make a killing. We'll make money like never before. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, no problem. You wanted me to come on your team? You come on my team first. You come to the yeshiva. If you come to the yeshiva, you know what, you'll marry my sister. And he did tshuva. And the moment he did tshuva, the Talmud recounts that Resh Lakish, which was able to jump, had a strength to be able to jump over a lake, he wasn't able to do it anymore. Because the moment you accept the yoke of Torah, you feel it on yourself. But that's a first step. In the second step, when you become more refined, you don't feel it's a yoke anymore. It's an energy, and nothing stops you. So he says, God hovers over you. He is standing over you. Umabit alav, and God looks at you. Ubochen kelayod valev, and he checks in your heart, and he searches his reins and his heart. Imovdo karaui, if you're serving God according to your level. ועל כן צריך לעבוד לפניו באימה וביראה כעומד לפני המלך. And therefore you have to stand before God with awe and fear as if you were standing in front of a king. Imagine if you start your day before you pray and you realize that your king is such a great king and he put everything aside for you and you accept him as your king. How are you going to express yourself to that God? How much self-confidence are you going to have that you are connected to such a God? This is Reshit Avodah Ve'ikara Ve'shorsha. This is the beginning. This is the foundation of our service to God. Once we have that in our mind, we walk everywhere with confidence. And then when we love like we've never loved before, because we know who we love. God bless you.